It started on a rainy Saturday afternoon, the kind of day where the world feels like it's wrapped in a grey, suffocating blanket. I had been cleaning out the attic, sorting through boxes of forgotten memories and old family photos when I found it. A small leather-bound journal tucked away in a cracked, dusty shoebox marked "Old Stuff." My sister's name, Emily, was written on the front in her neat, looping handwriting. I paused, turning the little book over in my hands. The leather felt worn, softened by years of handling, and the pages inside were yellowed and faintly curled at the corners. I knew I should have left it alone. We were always taught to respect each other's privacy, a lesson drilled into us by our parents. But something about that journal pulled at me, a whisper in the back of my mind that told me this wasn't just another diary. So before we unravel this intense story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Invite viewers to share their thoughts in the comments, and if they've ever experienced something similar, don't hold back, spill the tea. Now get comfortable, maybe grab a warm drink, and let's dive deep into tonight's roller coaster of emotions. I cracked it open, and the faint scent of old paper and ink drifted up, mingling with the musty air of the attic. The first few pages were innocent enough high school crushes, teenage angst, the kind of stuff you'd expect from a girl trying to find her place in the world. I almost felt guilty for intruding on her private thoughts, but then I turned to a page dated 5 years ago. My heart stopped. I can't stand how everyone acts like she's perfect, always in her shadow. Well, that's about to change. My breath caught. She was talking about me. I scanned the lines, my eyes darting across the sharp, angry strokes of her handwriting. They all think she's the golden child. Mom and Dad dote on her like she's some flawless angel. But I see through it. I know what she really is, a self-absorbed, manipulative fake. I'll make sure she loses everything she holds dear. A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't just a passing grudge. This was pure, seething resentment. My mind raced back to moments that hadn't made sense at the time. Emily's strange behaviour, her cold stares when she thought no one was looking, the way she always seemed to be there when things went wrong in my life. I flipped through more pages, my fingers trembling as I devoured entry after entry. She wrote about how she had manipulated conversations, planted doubts in our parents' minds, and subtly isolated me from our friends. She'd even admitted to deliberately spoiling my surprise birthday party last year, whispering to my husband Ryan that I didn't even care about his effort, that I was only pretending to be grateful. She doesn't deserve him. I could treat him better. I would appreciate him. I felt sick. My mind flashed to that night, the one where Ryan came home unusually quiet, barely touching his dinner, his responses clipped and distant. I had blamed myself, convinced that I had done something to upset him. But it had been her. She had been planting seeds of doubt in his mind, turning him against me from the shadows. My pulse pounded in my ears as I flipped to a more recent entry dated just 3 months ago. She's getting too comfortable, too happy. I need to remind her that nothing is ever secure. I need to keep him close, keep her off balance. The words felt like a punch to the gut. I staggered back, my knees buckling as I sank to the dusty floor. My mind swirled with fragmented memories, moments that had once felt confusing or painful, now sharpened into a clear, brutal picture of betrayal. I slammed the journal shut, my breathing ragged. My entire body shook as the reality of what I had just read crashed down on me. This wasn't just sibling rivalry. This was a calculated campaign to destroy my happiness, orchestrated by the one person I had always thought I could trust. But as I sat there, the old attic shadows stretching long around me, a new resolve sparked in my chest. I wasn't just going to let this slide. If Emily thought she could play with my life like this, she had another thing coming. This was just the beginning. The days that followed felt like I was living someone else's life, a twisted, surreal version of my reality, where every memory, every conversation, every shared moment with my sister had a sinister, double meaning. I couldn't unsee the words I had read, the venomous confessions that had bled from her pen onto those fragile yellowing pages. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe she had just been venting, letting out her frustrations in private, the way we all do when life feels overwhelming. But that excuse crumbled the more I thought about it. The journal entries were too calculated, too coldly specific to be mere teenage angst or a fleeting grudge. I found myself avoiding Emily at family gatherings, my stomach twisting every time her voice cut through the room. She was good at playing the role of the sweet, supportive sister, always ready with a compliment or a warm hug. It made me feel sick, like I was trapped in a play where everyone else had memorized the script, but I had only just discovered my lines. But then I started to notice the cracks in her mask. Little slips that I had missed before, like the way she'd subtly steer conversations away from my successes, or how she'd let her smile falter for just a second when someone praised me. It felt like I had been handed the missing piece to a puzzle I didn't even know I was trying to solve. One evening, as I sat alone in our living room, I pulled the journal out from its hiding place. I had shoved it deep in the back of my closet, buried under old sweaters and forgotten handbags, but it had been calling to me ever since that day in the attic. My hands trembled as I flipped it open again, my eyes darting to an entry dated last summer, right before my wedding anniversary. If I can make him doubt her, really doubt her, maybe he'll finally see what a fraud she is. I just need the right moment. My mind raced back to our anniversary dinner. Ryan had been distant that night, his eyes colder than usual, his responses clipped. I had assumed he was just tired from work, or maybe stressed about the mortgage. But now, reading those words, I could feel the pieces snapping into place. Emily had been there that weekend, coming over to help me decorate for the small family get-together we had planned. She must have whispered something, planted a seed of doubt, and watched it grow. I kept reading, my pulse pounding with every line. She had written about watching us from across the room at family events, analysing every glance, every touch, every shared smile. She had convinced herself that I didn't deserve the happiness I had built, that my marriage was a facade and that she could be the one to shatter it. It's almost too easy. She's so wrapped up in her perfect little life that she never even sees me coming. But he does. I can see it in the way he looks at me when she's not around. A fresh wave of nausea hit me. Was she delusional, or had I missed something crucial? Was my husband somehow complicit in this twisted fantasy of hers? I slammed the journal, shut my mind, spinning with possibilities. I needed proof, real proof, not just the scribbled fantasies of a bitter sister. I needed to know if she had actually managed to turn my husband against me, or if this was all just in her head. The next day, I found myself digging through old texts, emails, even Ryan's credit card statements. I combed through our shared social media accounts, looking for anything that might suggest a deeper connection between them. And that's when I found it, a series of late-night Venmo payments to Emily, each one marked with a casual message like, "Thanks for the help," or "Appreciate you." My fingers tightened around my phone, the blood roaring in my ears as I scrolled through the dates. They lined up almost perfectly with some of our biggest arguments those nights when he came home late, his excuses thin and his affection even thinner. And then the real gut-puncher message I had missed before, buried in the sea of notifications from months ago. "You're right, she's changed." I felt my heart splinter in my chest. She hadn't just been planting doubts, she had been actively poisoning my marriage, whispering lies into his ear, until the man I had once loved with all my heart no longer trusted me. The walls of our house suddenly felt too close, the air too thick. I dropped my phone onto the couch and stumbled to the kitchen, gripping the counter as my breath came in sharp, shallow gulps. She was trying to destroy my life from the inside out, and I had let her. I had let her into my home, my heart, my marriage, never suspecting that the person I had trusted the most would be the one to twist the knife so deeply. But not anymore. If she thought she had the upper hand, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. This was war. The days that followed felt like a waking nightmare. Every time Ryan touched my shoulder or kissed my cheek, I had to force myself not to recoil, to swallow the rising bile that came with the thought of his betrayal. I found myself staring at him across the dinner table, watching the way his eyes would flicker when he thought I wasn't looking, the subtle tension in his jaw whenever Emily's name came up in conversation. But I couldn't confront him, not yet. I needed more than just a gut feeling and a handful of sketchy Venmo transactions. I needed undeniable proof, the kind that couldn't be brushed off as paranoia or insecurity. So I became an investigator in my own home. I started paying attention to every little detail, every whispered phone call, every hastily closed laptop. I scrolled back through months of text messages, scanned his social media for hints, and even checked our shared location history on his phone. It felt like I was losing my mind, tearing through our lives for the hidden threads of a betrayal I still hoped I was wrong about. But then I found it. It was a Sunday morning. Ryan had gone out for a run, his phone left charging on the kitchen counter. I hesitated, my heart pounding as I reached for it, my fingers trembling slightly as I tapped into his messages. Most of them were harmless work group chats, family banter, a few old college friends. But then I saw it. A conversation thread with my sister, hidden under a mundane contact name M with a sunflower emoji. My stomach twisted as I clicked into it. "Thanks for covering for me yesterday. I owe you. No worries. Just be careful. She's starting to suspect something. I know. I'll handle it. She never stays mad for long." I felt my knees buckle my hand, gripping the edge of the counter to keep from collapsing. My breath came in short, panicked gasps as I scrolled further up, each line a fresh wound, each message a twist of the knife. "She's been so distant lately. I think it's working. Good. Just keep playing your part. She doesn't need to know. Can't wait for this to be over." I clapped a hand over my mouth, struggling to suppress the scream that clawed its way up my throat. They were in this together. My own sister and my husband conspiring against me, manipulating my reality until I doubted my own sanity. I dropped the phone back onto the counter like it had burned me, my pulse thundering in my ears as I stumbled backward. My vision blurred with tears, my mind spinning as I tried to make sense of the betrayal unravelling before me. Had this been going on for months, years? I thought back to the early days of our relationship, the way Emily had always been, so involved, so eager to offer advice or support. She had practically inserted herself into our lives from the start, always there with a sympathetic ear when I fought with Ryan, always the first to defend him when I vented about our struggles. The realization hit me like a slap to the face. She had been slowly, methodically driving a wedge between us for as long as I could remember, whispering doubts into his ear, planting seeds of resentment, until our marriage had become a twisted game in her sick, jealous mind. And the worst part, I had let her. I had trusted her, leaned on her, confided in her, never once suspecting that my own sister could harbour such a deep, festering hatred for me. I felt the walls of the kitchen closing in around me, the air thick and suffocating. I needed to get out to breathe, to clear my head before I did something I couldn't take back. I stumbled out the door and into the cool morning air, my bare feet sinking into the damp grass as I staggered into the backyard. The world felt too bright, too sharp, each blade of grass cutting into my skin like tiny accusing whispers. For a moment, I considered confronting her right then and there, grabbing my car keys and speeding to her apartment to throw the journal in her face, to demand answers, to make her admit what she had done. But no, that's what she would expect. She wanted me to crack, to explode in a fit of rage, so she could play the victim, twist the narrative, and paint me as the unhinged paranoid wife who had finally snapped. No, if she wanted a game I would play, but I would play to win. I wiped the tears from my cheeks, my breathing slowing as a cold, steely determination settled in my chest. If Emily thought she could destroy my life from the shadows, then it was time to drag her out into the light. I turned back toward the house, my mind already racing with plans, my heart beating with a new dangerous rhythm. I would expose her piece by piece, lie by lie, until she had no choice but to face the twisted reality she had tried so hard to hide. And when I was done, she would regret ever picking a fight with the sister she thought she had outsmarted. I spent the next few days walking a tightrope of composure, my mind constantly replaying those messages, each word echoing in my head like the tick of a bomb counting down to detonation. I watched them both, my sister and my husband, carefully, silently noting every glance they exchanged, every whispered conversation that ended the moment I entered the room. But I needed more. I couldn't confront them with just a few shady texts and my sister's journal. I needed something undeniable, something that would strip away their lies and force them to confront the truth they had so carefully hidden. I started small, checking Ryan's call logs when he left his phone unattended, sifting through his emails for clues. It was risky, terrifying even, but I had to know the full extent of their betrayal before I made my move. And then I got my first real break. It happened on a Thursday evening. Ryan had gone upstairs to shower after his run, and I seized the opportunity to check his phone again. My fingers moved quickly, my pulse pounding as I scrolled through his recent call history. That's when I saw it, a series of late-night calls to Emily, each one lasting nearly an hour, stretching back for months. I felt my hands clench into fists, my jaw tightening as the timeline of my marriage twisted in my mind, reshaping itself around this newly revealed truth. They had been talking behind my back for ages, whispering in the dark, while I lay just a few feet away, oblivious to the conspiracy unravelling in my own home. But that wasn't the worst of it. I scrolled further, my breath catching, when I found a saved audio file buried in his recent messages. My heart stopped as I tapped it, the sound crackling to life in my trembling hand. It was a recording. I just don't know how much longer I can keep this up. Ryan's voice crackled through the tiny speaker, his tone heavy with frustration. She's starting to notice. She keeps asking me why I'm so distant. Just hold on a little longer, Emily's voice responded, her tone smooth, almost soothing. Once this is over, you'll be free. We'll both be free. I nearly dropped the phone. My heart felt like it had been ripped from my chest, crushed beneath the weight of their betrayal. Free from what? From me, from the life we had built together. The recording ended, and I found myself staring at the phone in stunned silence, my mind struggling to process what I had just heard. They had been plotting against me, manipulating my reality, twisting my marriage into something unrecognizable, and I had never seen it coming. A surge of cold fury flooded my veins, sharp and bitter like a blade between my ribs. They thought they could outsmart me, that I would just fall apart quietly while they stepped over the ruins of my life. No, I set the phone down, my mind already whirling with plans. I couldn't just confront them, not yet. They would deny it, twist the truth, until I was the one left doubting my own sanity. I needed more. I needed to catch them in the act, to corner them with a truth so undeniable that even they couldn't wriggle their way out of it. And then it hit me. If they were this comfortable talking behind my back, there had to be more. Messages, recordings, emails, evidence scattered like breadcrumbs through their digital lives, just waiting for someone brave enough to follow the trail. I spent that night setting up a web of traps, changing the passwords to our shared streaming accounts, setting up alerts on Ryan's phone for specific keywords, and even installing a small recording device in the living room. It felt invasive wrong even, but I had to know the full extent of their betrayal before I could confront them. Over the next few days, I collected more and more evidence, each piece a fresh wound, a new scar on my already battered heart. Late-night calls, shared photos, inside jokes that cut me like glass. I even found a set of messages where Emily had convinced Ryan that I had been flirting with one of his friends, planting the seeds of doubt that had slowly poisoned our marriage. And through it all, I kept my mask firmly in place, smiling through gritted teeth as Emily hugged me at family dinners, biting back my rage as Ryan kissed me goodnight, his lips cold and unfamiliar against mine. But I couldn't keep up the act forever. I could feel myself unravelling, my patience fraying with every passing day. I needed a plan, a final, decisive move that would shatter their lies once and for all. And then one morning, as I was pouring myself a cup of coffee, I realised exactly how I would do it. It was so simple, so perfect, that I nearly laughed out loud. I would turn their own lies against them. I would use their own words, their own betrayals to trap them in a corner they could never escape from. I smiled into my coffee mug, the bitterness seeping into my bones as the plan took shape in my mind. They thought they had me fooled, that I was just another pawn in their twisted little game. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. I set my mug down, my heart pounding with a dangerous, exhilarating sense of purpose. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about reclaiming my life, my sanity, and my dignity. And when I was done, they would have nothing left but the ashes of the lies they had built their lives upon. The days leading up to my final move felt like the slow, tense build-up before a storm. I had never considered myself a particularly vengeful person, but the betrayal I had uncovered had awakened something dark and unyielding in me, a fierce, burning need for justice that consumed my every waking thought. I had collected enough evidence to bury them both. I had recordings of their whispered conversations, screenshots of their late-night messages, even the journal itself, with its venomous confessions scrawled across every yellowed page. I could have exposed them at any moment, torn their lives apart with a single, well-placed email or a carefully timed confrontation. But that felt too easy. They had taken their time weaving their web of lies over months, maybe even years, slowly twisting the knife until I had nearly bled out from 1,000 tiny cuts. No, if I was going to bring them down, I was going to make it count. So I waited. I played the perfect wife, the doting sister, smiling through every family dinner, every forced hug, every whispered conversation that ended the moment I walked into a room. I let them think they had won, that their secrets were still safe, even as I laid the final pieces of my trap. Finally, the perfect opportunity presented itself. My parents were hosting a family dinner to celebrate my father's birthday, a small, intimate gathering at their house, just close family, the kind of setting where secrets had a way of slipping out into the open. I arrived early that evening carrying a carefully wrapped gift and a smile that felt like it had been carved into my face. Emily was already there, flitting around the kitchen with her usual false cheer, pouring wine and arranging appetizers, as if she hadn't spent the past year trying to destroy my marriage. Ryan arrived a few minutes later, his eyes flicking to mine with a hint of nervousness that he quickly masked with a tight, strained smile. I felt my stomach clench at the sight of him, the man I had once loved more than anything, now little more than a stranger hiding behind a familiar face. As the evening wore on, I watched them, my pulse quickening every time their eyes met across the room, every time their hands brushed as they passed plates and refilled glasses. They were careful, cautious, but I could see the tension crackling between them, the unspoken fear that their secrets might come spilling out at any moment. Finally, as we gathered around the dinner table for dessert, I saw my moment. My father, already a few glasses of wine deep, leaned back in his chair and smiled at me, his eyes warm with the easy affection that had always made me feel safe, even when the world felt like it was falling apart. "You've always been the strong one in this family," he said, raising his glass in a half-drunken toast. "Always keeping us together, always doing what's right." I felt the words cut into me, sharp and bittersweet. I glanced at Emily, catching the flicker of guilt that passed across her face before she quickly masked it with a tight, nervous smile. I took a slow, deep breath, steadying myself for what I was about to do. "Actually, Dad," I said, my voice calm, steady, "I've been keeping a secret, and I think it's time I finally shared it." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to me as I reached into my purse and pulled out a small black USB drive. I felt my sister's eyes lock onto it, her face draining of colour as she realised what I was holding. "What's that?" my mother asked, her brow furrowing in confusion. I smiled, setting the drive down in the centre of the table. "Just a little collection of memories," I said, my voice steady even as my heart raced in my chest. I thought it might be nice to share a few old recordings, some messages, a little walk down memory lane. Ryan's fork clattered against his plate, his face going pale as he stared at the tiny piece of plastic, the weight of his guilt pressing down on him like a physical force. Emily's hand shot out trembling as she reached for the drive, but I snatched it back before she could touch it, my fingers tightening around it with a white-knuckled grip. "Not yet," I whispered, leaning in close enough for her to feel the heat of my breath against her ear. "Let's not ruin dessert." She froze, her eyes wide and glassy, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps, as she realised just how completely she had underestimated me. I sat back, slipping the drive back into my purse, my pulse still pounding as I met her terrified gaze. "Maybe later," I said, my voice calm, almost cheerful, "after cake." The rest of the meal passed in a tense, uneasy silence, the clinking of silverware and the clatter of plates the only sounds that filled the room. I could feel their fear, the quiet, simmering panic radiating off them as they struggled to keep their masks in place, their carefully constructed lies unravelling around them like fraying threads. And as I sat there watching them squirm, I felt a deep, savage satisfaction settle in my chest, a fierce, unrelenting hunger for the justice that I had been denied for far too long. The storm was coming, and I was ready to watch them drown in it. I barely slept that night. My mind raced with a chaotic blend of anger, betrayal, and the cold, calculated thrill of revenge. I could still see the fear in Emily's eyes, the way her hand had trembled as I pulled the USB drive back from her grasp. She had looked at me like a cornered animal, her carefully curated facade crumbling at the edges. The next morning, I woke up to a flurry of frantic messages from Emily. Her texts filled my screen, each one more desperate than the last. "We need to talk. Please just call me. I didn't mean for things to go this far. Don't ruin this for us." I tossed my phone aside, my lips twisting into a bitter smile. She was scared, finally realizing that her little game had spiraled out of control, that I was no longer the passive, oblivious sister she had spent years manipulating. I ignored her messages, letting the panic simmer as I prepared for what I knew had to come next. If I was going to break free from this twisted nightmare, I needed to sever every tie, expose every lie, and burn every bridge, no matter how painful it might be. I started by compiling everything I had gathered, the audio recordings, the text messages, the journal entries, even the late-night phone logs I had pulled from Ryan's device. I packaged it all into a single damning folder, the digital equivalent of a nuclear strike, and prepared to deliver it to my parents, my closest friends, and even a few of Emily's so-called supporters. But I wasn't done yet. I sat down at my laptop, my fingers trembling with a strange electric energy, as I typed out a long, brutally honest message to Ryan. I spared him no mercy, laying out every betrayal, every lie, every twisted manipulation I had uncovered. I told him exactly how I felt, how his betrayal had shattered me, How the man I had once loved with every fibre of my being had become a stranger to me. And then, as a final vicious twist of the knife, I attached the entire folder of evidence, every sick, twisted piece of their betrayal, and hit send. I sat back, my breath coming in short, ragged bursts, as the message slipped into the digital ether, a tiny blinking packet of pain and rage that would detonate the moment he opened it. And then I waited. It didn't take long. My phone buzzed an hour later, the screen lighting up with Ryan's name. I let it ring my heart, pounding in my chest, as I imagined the chaos unravelling on the other end of the line. When the call finally went to voicemail, I listened as his voice crackled through the tiny speaker, frantic, panicked, on the edge of tears. "Please, we need to talk. I can explain. It's not what you think. Please just pick up. I'm begging you." I deleted the message without a second thought, my pulse steadying as the silence washed over me cold and cleansing. Next, I turned my attention to Emily. I waited until I knew she would be at work, surrounded by colleagues, her phone buzzing on her desk, as the walls of her carefully constructed world came crashing down around her. I opened my contacts, found her name, and hit the call button, my heart pounding as I held the phone to my ear. She picked up on the second ring, her voice tight, strained, a hint of desperation leaking through the forced cheer. "Hey, I've been trying to reach you. Can we talk? Please, I just want to..." "Save it." I cut her off, my voice cold and sharp as shattered glass. "I know everything, Emily. I know about the messages, the late-night calls, the lies. I know exactly what you've been doing behind my back, and I am done playing your twisted little games." Silence. I could hear her sharp, panicked breaths on the other end, the tiny, crackling echoes of her colleagues chatting in the background as she struggled to find the right words. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her voice trembling with barely contained fear. "You're being paranoid. You've always been so paranoid." I felt a dark, savage satisfaction rise in my chest, the kind of cold, burning rage that comes from years of betrayal finally brought to light. "Check your email," I whispered, my voice low and dangerous. "I sent you a little present. Consider it a goodbye gift." I hung up before she could respond, my hand shaking as I set the phone down on the table. I could feel the blood roaring in my ears, my heart pounding with a fierce, unrelenting sense of freedom. It was over. I had torn the mask from her face, shattered the illusion of family she had clung to for so long, and exposed her for the manipulative, spiteful creature she truly was. And as I sat there, the echoes of her panicked breathing still ringing in my ears, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Peace. I moved out the following week, packing my belongings into neatly labelled boxes as the remnants of my old life crumbled around me. I didn't look back as I loaded the last box into my car, my pulse steady, my mind clear for the first time in months. I had cut every tie, burned every bridge, and left nothing but ashes in my wake. My sister was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered reputation, my husband to drown in the wreckage of our marriage, and I was free. As I drove away, the road stretching out before me like a promise of something new, something better, I felt a strange, exhilarating sense of weightlessness, as if the chains that had bound me for so long had finally snapped. I had faced the darkness, confronted the lies, and torn down the walls they had built around me. And now, as the miles slipped by beneath my tires, I felt the first tentative flickers of hope, the faint, glowing embers of a life I had thought I had lost forever. And I knew in that moment that I would never ever let them take that from me again. Story 2. They say Thanksgiving is about gratitude, togetherness, family. This year I paid for the entire dinner, not just the turkey and the stuffing, but everything. The table rental, the catering trays, even the parking passes for out-of-town relatives. My mother called it a small help. I called it a full month's rent. But after dinner, while clearing plates alone, I found a neatly wrapped gift box with a glittery tag to Elliot from Mum. Happy Thanksgiving. I smiled stupidly in hindsight. You didn't have to get me anything I said, wiping gravy off my hands. Oh, but I did, Mom replied, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. My younger brother Jack smirked from across the table. Dad kept sipping his wine like it was none of his business. I should have known then, should have walked away. I opened the box. Inside a white binder, thick and laminated, the title in bold block letters, Guidelines for Sharing Thanksgiving with the Family, Elliot Edition. I blinked. Is this a joke? Mom tilted her head. It's a gift. Constructive feedback. Jack leaned back, arms behind his head. We just figured things might be easier next year if you toned it down. Tone what down? Mum took a dainty sip of water. Oh, honey. You know, the work talk, the sarcasm, the moodiness. I flipped open the binder. It was colour-coded. Section 1. Conversation, do's and don'ts. No work talk. No correcting family members even when they're wrong. No passive comments about money. No dry humour. Section 2, contribution etiquette. If you pay for dinner, do it quietly. No complaining about costs. Store-bought food must be pre-approved. Don't weaponise generosity. I laughed. One of those short, hollow ones that dies in your throat. You printed me a manual for Thanksgiving. We're trying to make the holidays more pleasant, Mom said. For who? Jack shrugged. For all of us. You always bring tension. That's when I felt it. Not anger, not even hurt, just numb. Like I wasn't even part of this family, just a project to be managed, a line item on their budget. You didn't ask for help planning, I said. You volunteered, Dad cut in. I covered everything because Mom said she couldn't afford it. Mom frowned. You're making this into a scene. You gift-wrapped a list of my flaws and called it thoughtful. Jack chuckled. Well, when you say it like that... I looked around the table. No one made eye contact, not even my mother, not even after I paid for every fork on that table. I put the binder back in the box, closed it gently and said, I think I'll take next year off. Don't be dramatic, Mom said. I shook my head. You asked me to change. I'm listening. And then I left, but not before I slid an envelope under Mom's seat, plain, white, discreet. It wasn't a check. It was something she'd recognise later when the silence turned into panic. Because the house they all sat in, that dining room, that wasn't theirs, not anymore. The long build-up to the binder. If that binder had come out of nowhere, maybe I'd be laughing now. But it didn't. It was the final insult stacked on a tower of invisible ones. When Jack dropped out of college twice, I helped pay off his loans. It's just until he figures things out, Mum had said. When Dad got laid off in 2020, I quietly covered their mortgage for half a year. We'll pay you back, he'd mumbled once. They never did. When my cousin Maddie had emergency surgery, I helped cover her hospital bills. When Mum's car broke down, new battery on me. Thanksgiving was just the latest chapter in a story I'd been funding for a decade. They always had an excuse. I was single, I didn't have kids, I had a stable tech job. They forgot that stability came from sacrifice. I worked 60-hour weeks, skipped vacations, skipped dating, skipped fun, and every time I brought it up, they gaslit me. Why are you always keeping score? You're the responsible one. You have more than enough. Funny how enough only applies when I say no. 3 years ago, the turning point. There's one memory I never told anyone about. It was 3 years ago. I was helping Mum organise documents for a refinancing application. She said the house was drowning in overdue payments. While searching through drawers, I found an envelope labelled Notes for Rose Rose is my aunt. Inside were printed emails. One line burned into my skull. Elliot's good for money, but emotionally dull. He doesn't really belong with us, but he's useful. Useful. That word echoed for days. I didn't say anything, just put the envelope back and nodded politely when Mom said she appreciated my help. But something shifted in me that day. I opened a spreadsheet and started tracking every dollar I sent, every bill I paid. By the time the binder appeared, the total had passed $94,000. I didn't stop helping them, but I stopped expecting gratitude. It was transactional. I was the silent funder of their fantasy. I kept my mouth shut for peace. That ended on Thanksgiving. After the dinner. The binder was the trigger, but the response came slowly. A group chat pinged the next day. Mom, hope you made it home safe. We should talk soon. Jack, we were joking, man. Don't make it weird. Dad, no message, just a thumbs up to Jack's comment. I didn't respond. A week later, I got another message from Mom. Just wondering if you could grab the holiday ham again this year. Everyone liked it so much last time. I stared at it. No apology, no reflection. Just another request. I left her on read, but the next message, that was the one that changed everything. Kelly Jack's wife texted me late at night. Kelly, hey, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I think you deserve to know. It wasn't just your binder. They printed 5 copies, passed them around like it was funny. I called her immediately. You're kidding, I said. I wish I was, she replied. Your mum said it was the only way to manage your energy. Jack read from it like it was a comedy roast. They were all laughing. I stood in my kitchen, hand gripping the counter. That's not all, Kelly said. I didn't respond. She asked Jack if there was a way to remove you from the house title. I froze. What? You're on the deed, right? Not on it, I said. I own it. Silence. You own it? Every inch. That night I found the foreclosure documents I'd had drawn up a year ago just in case. Looks like just in case had arrived. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I mailed the letter. It wasn't fancy, no ribbon, no glitter. Just white paper in a tan envelope. Certified, signed, tracked. Inside was a formal notice of foreclosure initiation, addressed to my parents, marked urgent, signed by me, Elliot Reeves, sole property owner. I didn't hear a word for 4 days. Then the messages started. Mom, Elliot, this isn't funny. We need to talk. Is this a mistake? Dad, call me immediately. Jack. What the hell did you send? Are you insane? Mom again? This is cruel. Your father is beside himself. I didn't respond, not out of spite. I just didn't see the point. On the 5th day, a knock came at my door. I opened it to find Dad standing there with a look I'd only seen once before the day we buried Grandpa. Let's talk, he said. I stepped aside. No point arguing on the porch. We sat at my kitchen table. He didn't touch the coffee I poured him. This isn't how you handle family disagreements, he said. I stayed quiet. You can't just throw your parents out of their home. Technically, I said, I'm offering you 30 days' notice. That's more than you gave me when you called me difficult and handed me a printed rulebook. He winced. That wasn't meant to hurt you. But it did, I said. It wasn't the first time. It was just the first time you admitted it on paper. He looked old, small. For a second, I felt bad. But then I remembered the $78,000, the emails, the nights I fixed their finances while eating instant noodles alone. You need to grow up, he muttered. I stood. You need to pay rent or get out. This is me being grown. He left in silence. A family torn in 2 words spread faster than I expected. Within 3 days, I had 6 relatives texting me. Some pleaded, others guilt-tripped. My aunt, you're better than this, Elliot. My cousin, you're throwing away blood over money. Even Grandma called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. I don't know what they did this time, dear, but if it was bad enough for you to finally snap, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. Just don't burn yourself down in the process. Her voice cracked near the end. That one got to me. But what got to them was the sheriff's notice posted on their door a week later. Jack called me in a fury. You've lost your damn mind. I held the phone away from my ear. You think you're punishing us? He screamed. You're making yourself a pariah. Good luck finding a new family. I'm not looking for one, I replied. I'm looking for peace. You think you'll get it like this? I already have. I hung up. What they never understood. They always assumed I'd come crawling back, that my silence was temporary, that eventually I'd miss the dinners, the traditions, the chaos. What they never understood was that I'd been missing myself for years. I gave up hobbies, gave up holidays, gave up sanity so I could be their fixer, their emotional punching bag, their golden goose. And when I finally stopped giving, they labelled me broken. No one asked why I stopped. They just blamed me for doing it. It's amazing how fast people turn when their free ride hits the brakes. Kelly's message. One night I got a text from Kelly. Still married to Jack, though barely holding on. Kelly, I don't want to get involved, but I need to tell you something. I didn't answer, but she kept going. Kelly, your mum's trying to claim she never knew about the title change, that you forged it, that you manipulated them. I blinked at the screen. Then she sent a photo. A birthday cake with "Thank you, Elliot" written in blue icing. Below it, the caption to the best son for saving our home, love Mom. The date was stamped, August 2020. Let her try, I texted back. I've got receipts. The birthday dinner. And then came the event. I almost skipped Mom's birthday, but I didn't. I wanted to see their faces. I arrived late, intentionally. When I stepped in, the room buzzed with fake cheer. There he is, Jack announced, clapping like I'd walked on stage. The man of the hour, Elliot, Mom said, standing up, arms out. Thank you for coming. I nodded, but didn't hug her. Dinner was awkward, quiet. Everyone danced around the elephant in the room that the birthday girl was about to lose her house. Finally, Jack snapped. You really gonna do it? Do what? Evict your own mother. Let's clarify, I said. I'm not evicting anyone. I'm calling in a debt. She can pay or leave. It's your mother, Dad hissed. It's a house, I said. You told me for years not to get emotional about money. I listened. Jack slammed his fork down. This is low even for you. I smiled. You haven't seen low yet. And then I pulled out a small silver envelope and placed it beside Mom's plate. Another gift, I said, from me to you. She opened it slowly. Her eyes widened. Inside was a notice final 14-day demand to cure default. This is disgusting, she whispered. No, I said, this is justice. She looked up, eyes glassy. You used to be kind. I used to be a doormat. I left before dessert. The fallout begins. 2 days later, I got a call from a lawyer. My name is Grant Walker. I represent the Reeves family. I almost laughed. My family hired legal help to fight me. They're claiming undue influence, he said. Good luck, I replied. I have video of them thanking me. I have bank statements. I have copies of the binder. There was a pause. You seem prepared. You have no idea. That night I called my own lawyer. We reviewed everything. By the end of the call, he said, you're airtight. They won't win. I slept well for the first time in months. The message that broke me. A week before the eviction date, I got a voicemail from Mom. Her voice was soft, tired. Elliot, if this is about the binder, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. We were trying to help. I just wish you could see how much you matter to us. This family isn't the same without you. I stared at the phone. For a second, I almost believed her. Then I remembered the emails, the cake, the roast with my name as the punchline. And I deleted the voicemail. Because guilt is not the same as love, and begging is not the same as change. The eviction deadline loomed. 2 weeks, 14 days. That's all the time I gave them. Not out of cruelty, just fairness. They'd had over 3 years of my money. That was generous enough. On day 5, Jack tried a different tactic. He showed up at my apartment uninvited, pacing outside my door like a caged dog. I watched him from the peephole, back and forth. He finally knocked. Elliot, come on, man. You're really going to toss your own family into the street. I didn't open the door. I know you're in there. We can work this out. I know we've had issues, but this isn't you. He waited. When I didn't answer, he left after kicking my welcome mat halfway across the hallway. A shift in the game. The next night, I got an email. Subject about your parents. Sender Rachel Reeves, my cousin. We hadn't spoken in years. Hey, Elliot. I know we haven't been close, but I wanted to say I understand what you're doing. I used to think you were overreacting. Now I know better. Attached was a PDF screenshots of group texts from family dinners I was never invited to. In one thread, Jack had written, Elliot's always been weird. If we cut him off now, he'll still come crawling back. Another from Mom. He's always so serious, he needs to be taken down a notch. And worst of all, one from Dad. He's not one of us, he just pays like he is. I stared at those messages for a long time. Not because I was surprised, but because I wasn't. I wrote Rachel back. Me thanks, I needed this. You just handed me the nail for the coffin they built. The lawyer returns. 3 days later, Grant Walker, my parents' lawyer, called again. They're willing to negotiate. No, I said, they're willing to beg. Elliot, he said slowly, their health isn't great. Your mother has high blood pressure. Your father is pre-diabetic. Stress isn't helping. Tell them to drink more water and read the lease. Click. The line they crossed on day 10, I came home to find my car vandalised. Scratches across the driver's side. Traitor carved into the hood. I didn't need to guess who did it. Only 3 people had motive. One had a drinking problem. The other 2 liked to pretend they were above it. I filed a police report. Then I pulled footage from the building's security system. There he was, Jack, 3:14 a.m., hoodie, backpack, spray paint in hand. I didn't press charges, not yet. I had something better. Kelly's visit. That same night, Kelly knocked on my door. Not a call, not a text. She came in person. I left him, she said. I blinked. You what? I moved out. I'm staying with a friend. I couldn't do it anymore. The screaming, the chaos, the way they talk about you when you're not around. I let her in. She sat on my couch like she'd been running for miles. I was part of it too, she whispered. The dinners, the jokes. I didn't speak up. I was scared. I stayed quiet. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I just wanted to say, you weren't crazy. They did use you. I nodded. That binder, she added, was Mum's idea. Jack just printed it. Why tell me this now, I asked. Because they're still trying to spin the story. They say you snapped, went rogue, turned on the family, but you didn't. You just stopped bleeding for them. She stood to leave. Oh, she added, reaching into her purse. Before I forget, I found this. She handed me a flash drive. It's a voice recording, she said. A dinner at your parents' place. They didn't know I left my phone recording. I plugged it in that night. The first words I heard were Jack's. He's a sucker, always has been. Let him cover the mortgage, he's not going to ask questions. Then Mom, if he stops paying, we'll tell him he's selfish. That always works. And Dad chuckling. God bless the quiet ones. You can squeeze them dry. My turn on day 12, I went quiet. Didn't text, didn't call, no posts, no emails. Instead, I planned. On day 13, a courier arrived at their door. He handed them a thick envelope. Inside was everything: copies of the texts, the voice recording transcript, and a legal declaration revoking any shared family assets I'd once promised in my will. At the bottom of the letter, one sentence. The well is dry, dig somewhere else. Their desperation, the final day arrived. The sheriff showed up at 10:00 a.m. I didn't go. I sat in my apartment and watched it unfold from the security feed I had installed months ago. I saw Jack yell. I saw Mom cry. I saw Dad try to bargain. The officer shook his head and pointed to the notice. They had 30 minutes to grab what they could. Kelly texted me a photo at 10:34 a.m. The three of them sitting on the curb surrounded by boxes. No driveway, no porch, just street. Kelly, they're out. Me good. Then came a final message from Rachel. Rachel, it's quiet now. That house always felt heavy, like it was built on secrets. I hope the next one you live in feels like freedom. The unexpected call. That night my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something made me answer. Elliot Reeves, the voice asked. Yes, this is Carrie from Hope Ridge Assisted Living. We care for your grandmother, Judith. I straightened up. She asked us to call. She wants to see you. The Hope Ridge Assisted Living Centre was tucked into a quiet street just outside town. Red brick white shutters and flower beds that probably saw more attention than most of the residents. I hadn't seen my grandmother Judith Reeves in almost 6 years. She was sharp once, the kind of woman who could host Christmas dinner, fix the garbage disposal and solve the crossword before coffee got cold. But age crept in, memory got patchy. The family stopped bringing her around, said it was too sad to see her like that. But they had no problem using her name to open a second credit card for house repairs. I only found out because I tracked the charges. When I walked into her room, I expected distance, maybe confusion. Instead, she looked up from her chair and grinned. There's my boy. I froze. You remember me? I asked. She pointed a wrinkled finger at my chest. Elliot, born on a Wednesday, hated peas, loved maps. I laughed. For the first time in weeks, I laughed without bitterness in my chest. I thought they didn't visit, I said, sitting across from her. They don't, she replied, not unless they need something notarized. I stayed quiet. She didn't. They always said you were too sensitive, she continued, but I knew. You weren't soft, you were kind. That's rarer and harder. Her hand trembled as she poured tea. She offered me the chipped cup she saved for guests. Why now? I asked. She looked out the window. I heard about the house, the binder, the fallout. Your mother's been complaining to every cousin who'll pick up the phone. Let me guess, I said. She left out the fraud and years of emotional blackmail. Judith smiled slow and knowing, of course. In her version, you burned the family tree. I sipped the tea. She added, but sometimes fire is the only way to get rid of rot. The second house. I need to tell you something, she said, reaching for her nightstand. I've been meaning to change this for years, but I wasn't strong enough. She handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was a copy of her will. I'm giving you the cabin, she said, the one in Crestwood. I blinked. I didn't even know you still had it, because your mother tried to convince me to sell it, said it was a waste, that no one visited. You haven't been there in years. No, she said softly, but I kept it in your name, quietly, just in case you ever needed a place to begin again. I swallowed hard. You were always the one they leaned on. They hated that you didn't break. I didn't know what to say. She smiled again. Don't say thank you. Just use it and promise me one thing. What's that? Build something there, even if it's just peace. Aftermath. 3 days after the eviction, I drove past the old house. Empty windows, for sale sign crooked in the yard, a lifetime of guilt packed into a beige structure. I didn't stop. I went straight to Crestwood. The cabin was smaller than I remembered, wooden 2 bedrooms with a crooked mailbox and a deck that creaked in the wind. But it felt like mine. That night I sat on the porch and watched the sky bleed orange into blue. For once, my phone stayed dark. No missed calls, no demands, just silence. Real silence. Final attempts. In the weeks that followed, I got messages. Of course I did. Jack, so that's it. You cut us off completely. You'll regret it. Mom, I didn't raise you to be this cold. Dad, hope your conscience sleeps better than I do. I didn't respond. But then came something unexpected. A letter, handwritten, no postmark. Just tucked under my front door one morning at the cabin. It was from Ellie Jack's daughter, my niece. Uncle Elliot. I heard everything. I'm sorry. They say you're the villain, but I don't think you are. I saw the binder. I thought it was mean. Mom said you were sensitive. I think that's good. I miss you. Love, Ellie. I sat with that letter all day. A kid saw what 3 grown adults never could. The clean break, I sold the old house 2 months later. Didn't tell them. Didn't send a notice. The check hit my account, and I donated part of it to the Hope Ridge Renovation Fund. I also paid off Grandma's medical debt in full, quietly, anonymously. The rest went into an account labelled Start Over. I used it to replace the roof at the cabin, fix the plumbing, add shelves to the kitchen. Little things. Things that didn't ask me to carry anyone but myself. A year later, on Thanksgiving, I made my own dinner. 1 chair, 1 plate, 1 pie from scratch, burned the crust. Didn't care. I played jazz on the old radio, looked out the window, thought about the binder. Then I thought about the fireplace, tossed the last printed copy into the flames. It curled, smoked, disappeared. The real ending people ask if I miss them. I don't. I miss who I hoped they'd be. I miss the version of family I made up in my head when I was little, the one where love didn't come with a price tag or a rule book. But missing an illusion is just grief for a lie, and I'm done grieving lies. Now I wake up with space, with calm, with dignity. And I finally believe this. Family isn't who shares your name. It's who respects your boundaries. It's who doesn't hand you a manual on how to be less of yourself just so they can tolerate you once a year. It's who lets you stay whole. Even when you say no. Story 3, they didn't even let me take off my shoes. Sit, my sister Layla said, already grinning like she'd won something. We need to talk. It was supposed to be a normal evening, a casual family meeting, they said. But the air in my parents' living room was off, tense, performed, like they'd rehearsed something without me. I stood there holding a small potted plant I brought as a gift for Mom, feeling like I'd wandered into a stage play with no script. What's this about? I asked. My dad Everett leaned back in his recliner, swirling a glass of red wine, like some villain from an old movie. We took a vote, he said flatly. We've decided it's better if you don't come to the trip next month. Silence. I blinked. Excuse me. The trip to Spain, Layla added, her eyes sparkling. We think the dynamic will be better without you. I looked around. Mum avoided my gaze. My younger brother Caleb was scrolling through his phone, pretending to be uninvolved. The Spain trip, the one I planned, the one I booked, the one I paid for. They voted me out of it. You're serious, I said, slowly, heart thudding. You're always stressed, Layla shrugged. Last year you made a fuss about the Airbnb charging an extra fee. Remember? It kind of ruined the night. Because they overcharged us by $300 and tried to blame me, I snapped. Exactly, Mom said gently. This trip is supposed to be peaceful. I let out a laugh, bitter, ugly. I bought your plane tickets, I said, pointing at my dad and sister. I paid for the hotel, the van rental, even the winery tour Layla begged for. That was nearly $7,000, and now you're uninviting me, you offered, Dad said with a shrug. Yeah, Layla added, but then you started acting like it was your trip. It's weird. I was the one who booked it. Okay, let's not be dramatic, Mom cut in. It's not personal. We just want to relax this time. That did it. I pulled out my phone, opened the travel app, found the shared account that handled all the bookings. Dad's phone buzzed on the table, then Layla's, notifications lighting up. What was that? Dad asked. I just blocked the account, I said calmly. Cancelled the bookings. The trip is off. If I'm not invited, neither is my money. You can't do that, Layla hissed, standing up. I just did. Caleb looked up from his phone, pale. But we leave in 2 weeks. What are we supposed to do? Get creative, I said, grabbing my keys. You always said I worry too much. So now it's your turn. Don't walk out, James' mom called. We can talk about this. I turned at the door. No, you wanted peace. You got it. And then I left, just like that. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset, but because something inside me had shifted. For years I'd been the family fixer, the one who booked, paid, planned, and smoothed over every rough edge. And for what? To be excluded, like an afterthought from the very trip I'd built. The silence of my apartment felt different now. Not lonely, just quiet, calm, like a storm was waiting to be named. By morning they had escalated. Layla posted a smug Instagram story. I didn't even follow her anymore, but a friend sent it to me. A photo of her holding a wine glass in front of a travel brochure with the caption, "Some people just can't handle not being the centre of attention. Spain without stress." I could feel the heat rise in my chest, but I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my email. Subject: flight confirmation, Madrid, 4 tickets. My name, my payment method. And then a 5th booking, business class. It wasn't mine. Seat 1C, Layla's name, charged to my card, booked after I'd cancelled everything. My hands trembled not from rage, but from the cold, calculated betrayal. I called the airline. Yes, I'd like to cancel a group booking and report unauthorised use of my credit card. The agent was polite. I was firm. In less than 15 minutes, the flights were gone, the business class seat included. Then I logged into the hotel reservation account. Their reservation had been rebooked behind my back. Layla had used my profile. Probably forgot I'd get the alert. 1 click. Cancel reservation done. And finally, the villa. A sprawling countryside estate in Seville. Pool, private chef, the works. I emailed the manager, directly explained the situation, and requested a refund to my original payment method. She agreed. Apparently, Layla had already requested changes without my consent. Now they'd have to explain why their luxury vacation suddenly vanished. But that wasn't all. In my frustration, I dug deeper. I checked the shared expenses account Mom and I had used for family gatherings. Over $1,200 in recent charges. Designer shoes. Spa treatments. A catered tasting dinner for 6. All within the last month. None of it for me, none of it even discussed. That evening the phone rang. James' mom said, her voice tight, "We need to talk." "No, we don't." She exhaled. "I think you're misunderstanding what happened. I think you're underestimating what happens when you mess with someone who's been quiet for too long." There was a pause. "The tickets are gone." "Good catch. You didn't have to do that. You've made things very complicated." I almost laughed. Complicated is watching your family lie to your face and still being expected to pick up the check. You always overreact. And you always assume I won't. Then I hung up. I didn't answer when Layla called an hour later, or when Dad texted, "Can't believe you'd stoop this low. You've embarrassed all of us." Good. It was about time someone flipped the script. The fallout begins. 2 days passed. I kept my phone on silent. I deleted the family group chat, blocked Layla on everything, put a fraud alert on my credit report. Then the real drama began. Liam, my cousin, sent me a screenshot from the new family-only chat they thought I wouldn't see. "Layla, James is trying to ruin everything. He's mentally unstable, probably jealous. I mean, what else does he have going for him? Dad, he's always had an ego problem. Maybe cutting him off was the wake-up call he needed. Mom, this is why we didn't want him on the trip. He brings drama." I sat there staring at their words, calm, cold. They weren't just rewriting the narrative. They were painting me as the villain for daring to draw a line. So I gave them a reason to believe it. I went to the reunion anyway. It wasn't in Spain anymore, obviously. With their trip cancelled, they fell back on the backup plan, a rented house in Lake Arrowhead. Smaller, cheaper, less glamorous, but it was still happening. And I was invited. Only they didn't know it. My cousin Liam offered to bring me. "Come as my +1, he said with a smirk. Let them stew." I thought about it, I really did. Then I bought a camera instead. Liam walked me through the house with FaceTime. I didn't need to be there physically. I just needed to record what mattered. Layla drinking wine and complaining about the psychopath brother. Mum whispering that he'll come crawling back eventually. Dad angrily muttering about suing me for damages. They didn't know Liam was recording, but I did. Because when you spend your whole life being careful, you learn to plan for the crash. The next morning I mailed a letter, a real one, with a copy of the refund receipt, the list of unauthorized transactions, and a photo of the printed group chat. To each of them, the note attached said, "This isn't revenge, it's accountability. I'm not angry, I'm free. And for once, I won't be paying for anyone else's peace." James 3 weeks after I sent the letters, my doorbell rang. It was my dad. I hadn't seen him in person since the so-called family vote. He stood outside holding a gift bag that looked like it came from a gas station. No eye contact, no smile. Just a tense, awkward pause before he spoke. I thought we could talk. I didn't move from the doorway. "Now you want to talk." He glanced at the sidewalk. "Look, things got a little out of hand." I leaned against the doorframe. Was it the public receipts that got out of hand, or the fact that I didn't roll over like usual? He sighed. It wasn't personal. "You voted me out of my own vacation," I said slowly, then helped spin a lie about it online. "You used my money. You watched them mock me. And now you want forgiveness because the trip's cancelled and Layla's having a meltdown." He flinched. Good. For once he could sit with the discomfort. "You think we were trying to hurt you?" he asked. "No," I said. "You weren't thinking about me at all. That's the problem." He held out the bag like it was a peace offering. "It's just a bottle of wine." "I'm not thirsty," I replied and shut the door. That was the end of that. When the truth spreads, so does the silence. After the letter, the video clip from Liam made its way into the extended family group chat. Apparently, my aunt forwarded it without realising what it was. 10 seconds of Layla joking that James probably cried himself to sleep after we voted him out. What a diva. Not exactly the hallmark moment they wanted. The reactions were brutal. Cousin Anthony replied, "Wow, so this is what y'all call family." My uncle, who'd stayed neutral for decades, messaged, "Funny, James was the only one who helped us after the house fire. You mocked him." My grandmother didn't text. She called, and I answered. "James," she said, soft and heavy with disappointment, "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She continued, "I always thought you kept your distance because you didn't care. I see now you stayed quiet because no one ever listened." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I wasn't trying to hurt them," I whispered. "I know," she said, "but maybe it's time someone did." The unexpected turn. A week later, I got a message from someone I never expected, Brian. Layla's fiancé. Or ex-fiancé, I wasn't sure anymore. He DM'd me on LinkedIn of all places. Professional and polite. "Hey James, I know this is weird, but thank you for exposing the truth. I had no idea how deep it ran. I ended things." He followed it with a Venmo request. Not for money, but to send me $300. "For the wine she bought on your card," he wrote. "She told me it was a gift from you." I almost laughed. I declined the payment but replied, "Appreciate the gesture, keep your receipts." He responded with one line. I learned that lesson the hard way. Layla breaks down. They say people like her never face consequences. That's not true. Layla spiraled after the trip imploded. No Italy, no Brian, no curated photos for Instagram. She started posting passive-aggressive healing journey quotes. Some people will never understand the damage they cause. The strongest ones are always the most betrayed. It was like watching a soap opera, except I wasn't in it anymore. Until one day she posted a crying selfie and tagged it, "When your own blood turns into poison." The comments were brutal. One girl wrote, "Maybe stop stealing credit cards and you'll feel better." Another, "James deserves a vacation just for putting up with you." By the time she deleted her account, the damage was done. Her image shattered, her relationship scattered, her entitlement finally costing her something. And I was watching it all from the comfort of my living room, sipping a latte I paid for with my own card. But that wasn't the end, because Layla couldn't go down quietly. She filed a police report, claimed I hacked her online accounts and publicly humiliated her with doctored evidence. A detective called me a few days later. Routine, they said. I sent them everything. Full bank records, timestamps, email confirmations, airline receipts, video from Liam. 10 minutes into the conversation, the detective interrupted. You're not in trouble, she said. Frankly, this is one of the cleanest cases of financial manipulation I've seen. And that was that. Then came the letter from Mom. Not an apology, not even close. It started like a warning. You've made your point. Now it's time to let it go. Then the guilt trip. We raised you. We deserve more than this cold shoulder. Then the pitch. Your sister is struggling. Maybe you could help her rebuild. Help her rebuild. She lit the match. I sent back a one-sentence reply. You raised me to believe love was earned through sacrifice. I'm finally unlearning that. The shift I didn't expect. I wasn't angry anymore. Not even hurt. What I felt was distance and peace in it. I didn't owe them a second chance just because we shared DNA. I didn't owe silence to people who used it as cover. I owed myself clarity. And I finally had it. The family reunion still happened. Smaller, sadder, quieter. No Italy, no vineyard, no luxury villa. They rented a cabin near the lake. I know because my cousin Annie posted a blurry photo with the caption, "Just family this year." No hashtags, no laughter, no Layla. Mom wasn't smiling. Dad looked like someone stole his wallet. Layla didn't show up at all. The picture got 3 likes. One of them was from an account that no longer existed a week later. Funny how the truth follows you longer than a vacation ever could. A month after the family reunion that I wasn't invited to, I was walking through a weekend street market coffee, in one hand sunlight on my face, when I saw a woman waving at me. I didn't recognize her at first. Turns out it was Melissa, one of Layla's old high school friends. We hadn't spoken in years. She approached cautiously as if I might snap. "James," she said, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I blinked. For what? "For believing her," she replied. "For assuming your silence meant guilt." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She looked embarrassed. "Layla told everyone you were obsessed with control, that you tried to cancel the trip to punish her. But when all the screenshots came out..." Her voice trailed off. I nodded. People see what they want until they can't ignore what's right in front of them. She handed me a small bag. "It's nothing, just a thank you. I left that circle a while ago, but your story helped me walk away from a few toxic people too." She left before I could respond. Inside the bag was a small book titled "Boundaries Aren't Walls. They're Doors You Lock from the Inside." I laughed out loud. The final blow never came. I thought Layla might sue again. I thought my parents would attempt another guilt-laced intervention. But nothing came. Just silence. At first it felt eerie, like waiting for a storm after the first rumble. Then I realized this was the storm. Their empire of entitlement had fallen. They just didn't have the tools to rebuild, not without me. And I wasn't their foundation anymore. A new life, one small joy at a time. I moved to a new place. No shared leases, no relatives within 200 miles, no more second phones just for family emergencies. My first night there, I lit a candle, sat by the window and just breathed. No calls, no drama. No, "Can you help us out just this once?" I slept for 10 hours straight. The kind of sleep you only get when your phone isn't a loaded weapon. Layla's last attempt. 2 months later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. It was from Layla. The letter was short, barely 4 paragraphs, but it said more than I expected. "I lost Brian. I lost my job. Mom won't stop crying, and Dad blames everyone but himself. I didn't write this to beg. I just wanted you to know I was wrong." It ended with a single line. "If I could go back, I wouldn't vote you out. I would have voted myself out instead." No apology, but not a deflection either. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't offer excuses. And maybe that was the most honest thing she'd ever done. I didn't respond. Not out of hate, but because I didn't need to. The closure wasn't in her letter. It was in my ability to read it without shaking. From black sheep to blueprint. A few weeks later, I got a message from Liam. Just a photo. Him in a new apartment. Simple, clean, peaceful. The caption read, "Your courage gave me mine." That's when it hit me. I didn't just break the cycle. I lit the damn path for someone else to walk through too. Grandma's final gift. My grandmother passed a few months later. Her funeral was quiet. Simple. Dignified, the opposite of every chaotic family event I remembered. After the service, her lawyer asked to speak with me privately. She'd left me something. A letter, handwritten. "James, I saw you, even when they didn't. I'm sorry I stayed quiet, but I'm proud of you for not doing the same." She left me her house. The one with the garden I used to help her weed in the summers. The one where Layla threw a tantrum at age 15 because it didn't have a pool. I sat on the porch that night holding her letter, knowing that someone had finally validated everything I sacrificed. And not with words. With action, with trust, with legacy. So what happened after that? My parents never tried to contact me again. Layla faded offline for good, or at least from the places I still frequented. Some relatives stayed distant. Others reached out cautiously asking for my side. I didn't offer it. Not because I had something to hide, but because I no longer felt the need to defend my boundaries. Those who saw the truth came closer. Those who didn't let them stay where they're comfortable. I'm not shrinking again. Here's what I know now. Family isn't blood. It's respect. It's people who don't call you selfish for choosing yourself. It's friends who send memes when you're down, co-workers who notice when you're tired, strangers who say, "Hey, your story helped me." I thought I lost everything when I cut ties. Instead, I made room. Room for better people. Room for peace. Room for me. I used to think saying no made me the villain. Now I know saying no was my origin story. Not everyone will clap when you protect your peace. That's okay. The applause you need most is the quiet voice in your head that says, "Good job, you chose yourself." I hear that voice every day now. When I pay my own rent with pride. When I wake up without dread. When I take solo trips with no guilt-tripping texts, and no family leeches waiting for the souvenir I forgot to buy. So if you're reading this, and you've been made to feel like the bad one for setting a boundary, let me tell you something clearly. You're not bad. You're brave. And if you ever doubt it, remember this. They tried to vote me out. They tried to make me the problem. But the only thing I took with me when I left was the truth. And that was all I ever needed. Final line. They lost a wallet. I found my worth. And I'll never trade peace for proximity again.